Okay, so today is Saturday, March 20, 2021, and this is the start of an interview with Mabel Faoro. We are meeting at Mabel's home in Grand Gorge, New York. My name is Bonnie Daly, and I'll be the interviewer. I'm a member of the Jefferson Historical Society, and this is being done in connection with the Jefferson Historical Society's Oral History Project. We'll mainly be talking about Mabel's memories of Jefferson from the early years. So, let's start with the basics. Tell us your name.
Well, it's Mabel Evelyn Totten Faoro.
Totten?
Yeah.
And where and on what date were you born?
I was born June 6th, 1929.
Okay, and when and where were you married?
I was married in Grand Gorge twice. That's another story.
We'll get there.
Oh dear, what year? 1949.
Okay. And so, twice you said. Who was your spouse or your first spouse?
Well, it was to the same spouse. I don't know if you want this information or not.
Whatever you're comfortable. Just tell us your first
marriage.
marriage.
We were married by a justice of the peace.
Okay.
And he read through all of the ceremonies that we could have, so it took quite a while. We had figured on half an hour. But a couple hours later, he was filling out the papers, and he looked at it, he says, "Oh, I can't marry you. You're not old enough."
Oh, after all that?
So it was then about 9:30 at night, so he called the minister down in Grand Gorge, whom I didn't know because I'd never lived there. And we drove down, and I can still see the minister coming down the stairs in his slippers and pajamas. So we got married in his living room a second time.
Oh my gosh, that's fascinating.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So the Methodist minister could marry you, but the Justice of the Peace could not.
That's right.
And you were, what, 18?
18.
18.
Yeah, I was going on 18.
Yeah. Oh, got it. That's wonderful. What was your husband's name?
John Faoro. F as in Frank, A-O-R-O.
Okay. And how did you meet?
At a dance in Jefferson.
Oh, nice. Where was the dance?
At the high school.
The high school. Okay.
I came home from college on the weekends, and some of the girls, women. We were girls back then. We'd go and just have a good time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny. My girlfriend and I were dancing, and this man stopped in back of her and asked her if she'd dance with him, and so she said yes. And I looked around and I didn't see anybody, so I thought, what am I supposed to do? I turned around and fell over my husband to be feed. I almost laid it on the floor. So I fell for him immediately.
I would call that fate.
Yeah, I never dated anybody else after that.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
How long after that do you think it was before you got married?
Well, that was, probably about 6-8 months.
Oh, not long at all.
Oh, no, not very long. Yeah. And we had a marriage for 52 years.
Wonderful.
And then he got sick and left us.
Well, let me ask you, your mother, what was her name?
Anna, Marjorie, Stewart, Totten.
And when and where was she born?
She was born right in Jefferson, just outside of Jefferson, on the road between Stanford and Jefferson.
Oh, yeah.
There was a farm there.
And your dad, what was his name?
His name was Wilford Oh gosh, I can't we used to call him Gobbledygook because it was a funny middle name, and I'm sorry, I can't remember his middle name, but it was a G anyway.
That's pretty good. I like gobbledygook.
Totten.
Yeah.
You can tell my family was a interesting one.
Yeah. And when and where, or I'm sorry, on what date was he born?
November 1st, 1898.
1898.
Yeah, 1898.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. And do you know when and where they were married?
No, I really don't have much information about my father's side.
Okay.
It was strange, but Grandma Totten she wasn't very talkative.
Oh.
So.
Yeah, I've done a little research on the Tottens, and Wilfred Totten, I've seen his name. Did you know Cora Totten by any chance?
That was his mother.
That was his mother. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So did your parents have brothers and sisters?
My mother had a sister, and my father had 3 brothers and a sister.
What were their names?
He had a brother, Floyd, whose nickname was Jack, which I never could figure out, but he ran a garage in Cobleskill, and Howard and Ethel.
She was my 4th grade teacher.
Yeah, she was my 6th grade teacher.
She was.
Yes, I can remember. One didn't misbehave in there.
Exactly. Yes, discipline, but she was fair.
Oh yeah, she was. Very fair.
Yeah.
He and my father ran a garage for a while in Jefferson until, the Depression came along, and they had to give it up because people weren't paying their bills, and they couldn't pay for the cars. And back then they were doing a lot of it was more harness, and because horses were available. In fact, my father sold the first car that was sold in Jefferson. He sold it to Dr. Duell.
He did?
Yeah.
Oh my. I saw one of our neighbors had the license plate SCH6, Garfield Plus. So Dr. Well must have had an even earlier one.
It must have been. And I assume it's a fact. Because my father used to brag about it.
Sure.
Well, I wasn't born until 1929.
Right, you were
so it was really the tail end of it. But
you remember what your parents would talk about.
Oh, well, I remember living through it, too.
Oh,
we didn't have any money, and we eventually lost a restaurant for...
Oh, my God.
Oh, I think it was a little less, probably around $1,500. They just couldn't pay anymore.
No.
And it was owned by my mother's family, because they had run it before she did.
Where was the restaurant?
Right next to the hotel.
In
Jefferson.
Oh, so next to the Jefferson House?
Yeah, I guess that's what they call it now. It used to be Galola's back when I was there.
Galola's. And
it was just a bar. It wasn't a restaurant.
Now that's the one across from the Village Green, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's now the building that was the restaurant is now an apartment house, I think. I think it's just a plain house.
So that isn't what they call the Heartbreak now.
Oh, no.
It was a different place.
Yeah. The Heartbreak Hotel. Where is it?
It's directly on Main Street across from the Village Green. I think that was once the Jefferson House.
No.
No?
Isn't the Heartbreak Hotel, isn't that what used to be the bar?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the restaurant was right next. It's that big white house that's right next to it.
Oh, okay.
And then there's a road that goes, a path, a street
down
that
to
goes
the old
down.
cemetery.
Then it goes around, and then eventually it goes down to the cemetery.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And there was a feed store back there, at the end of the little road that goes down, the street. there was a house right next to it, you know, right
Those
next
are
to
both
the,
gone now.
yeah, oh, you don't have my map. And I gave it to, no, I gave it I gave it to Kevin.
Oh.
I would have drawn a decent one if I known he was going to publish that, for crying out loud.
Did he? Oh.
Yeah, it's
In one of
it's
the
on my
books?
cell phone. I mean, I just sat here and sketched it, right? Because I just wanted him to see it.
Sure.
I mean, I would have used a ruler and at least drawn a straight line. But, oh
That's
dear.
all right. You got the ideas across.
Yes,
that
I
was
did.
what we care about. So.
But that's where where it was.
Okay, that's perfect. Yeah, no, that gives us a good picture. So I wanted to ask when and where your parents were married. Were they both in Jefferson? Did they get married in Jefferson?
You know something I don't know.
Don't know. Okay, that's all right.
No, and I'm not even sure. I think it was about 3 or 4 years before I was born, but I'm not even sure of that.
Were you the oldest of the brothers and sisters?
Yes.
Oh, you were. How many brothers and sisters did you have?
Well, unfortunately, I only had one other brother. My mother had a boy, and I don't know if I should tell you this or not. The nurse decided she didn't want my mother to have it until the doctor was there, so she held the baby in. And I was about 4 years old, and I was in the room next to where my mother was having the child, and I can still hear her cries.
I'll bet.
And finally the doctor got there, and the baby was born, and he was okay, but then this idiot nurse, and I'm sorry, but she was, gave the baby a bath in the open, in front of an open window in February. He caught pneumonia and died 3 days later.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And I'll finish the story. My mother, of course, was really bereft, and I can still remember her talking to my father. I probably shouldn't have been listening, but I was. And she said, well, it had happened, and there wasn't anything she could have done about it. So she said she just had one wish, that that woman, when she had her first child, had one horrible, horrible time having it. She was in labor for 3 days before they finally performed a cesarean. And so I can still remember my mother sitting in the kitchen with a big smile on her face, which told you what my mother was like. And she said she got what she deserved.
You know, we always think what goes around comes around, and there's
it does if you wait long enough.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't have to wait too long.
But
oh, dear.
No, I was only 4.
Story.
I can remember going out into the kitchen. Somebody had delivered a bunch of flowers, and of course my brother was in a casket in the living room, and I went and I got some flowers. I was only 4, so I don't know how I knew what to do with them, but I put them in the casket. And my mother said they were going with him, and they did. But I had a brother. She got pregnant again, and he was about 6 years younger than I.
Oh, and what was his name?
Wilfred Paul.
Wilfred, okay.
And he was called Paul.
After his dad.
Yeah, he was named after Dad, but Dad didn't want him called.
No, too confusing.
Yeah, it does. Well, my father was always called Bill, which I never could figure out from Wilfred, but that's okay.
Do you have any idea where, I mean, how many generations has your family been in the U.S. or in the area?
Oh, my goodness. I can't go back that far. I know my grandparents, well, as I said, they lived over on the... Well, I can go back, but I don't know how far it is. There was an Indian princess who met an English, well, I don't know what he was, But anyway, he was high up on the chain over there. And he had come over here, and I think it was a member of the Iroquois tribe, but I'm not sure about that. Anyway, they met and they married. And she went back to England with him for a while. And then he came back over here. And I think they settled in Pennsylvania to begin with.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure about this because this is just something my grandmother told me.
Yeah.
And I have no idea how they got to Jefferson.
That's fascinating.
That part of it was never part and parcel of anything I ever heard.
That's a wonderful family story.
I should do some investigating in that.
Well,
into that.
we're going to try. I don't know, if we'll find her.
I know.
It's hard to find that far back.
Oh, yeah, I know.
What did your father do for a living?
My father? Well, as he's, in the beginning, do you want to go way back?
Sure.
His father was, he was hurt. He was superintendent of roads. Now, this is what I've heard.
Okay.
So don't,
That's
hold me to
fine.
it.
We won't.
And he was hurt in some kind of an accident on the road. I don't know what it would have been because it was before the day of cars. And he lost the use of his arm, I think. And he went, I never knew him. He went steadily downhill and he died. So my father had to quit school because my grandmother had no money. So my father quit school. And one of the jobs he had was driving cattle from Blenheim to Jefferson. He got I think he got something like $1 a week for doing that.
Wow.
And then he went down to New York City and he worked in a meat processing plant, which was why he never ate hot dogs or bologna, because they said they took all the scraps and put them in a barrel and stuck them out on the walk, and then when the barrel got full they brought it in, drained it, and made hot dogs and bologna.
He was a smart man not to touch that. You really. Oh dear.
So it was funny. He finally got so he realized that they weren't doing that anymore, hopefully. And so, and then after the garage went kaflooey, he got a job driving mail, and he drove mail for the rest of his life.
So he worked for the post office then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my mother worked there too. She was a assistant postmistress for a while later on in life.
We were hearing, and this fits with my family too, during the Depression, people would try to get government jobs. And that sounds like what your dad did.
Well, I think it was the only job that was available.
Exactly.
And it happened to come up right at the right time.
Perfect.
So he drove, he had, I think it was about 32 miles he drove every day.
Oh, so it wasn't the post office here?
Oh, yeah, it was in Jefferson. It was a rural route.
Oh, I get it. Right.
Yeah.
So your grandfather, what was he doing before the accident? Do you know what sort of work he did?
I said he was on the road. He was like a superintendent.
Ah.
Building the road and stuff.
You did tell us.
Back in the good old days. Yeah, come on, girl, get with it.
Roads. Okay. Sorry.
Don't make me repeat myself more than twice.
Yeah. Okay.
Who knows? The story might be different.
I doubt that. No, you seem very, very sharp. So okay. So where did your grandparents live? I guess we'll start with your dad's parents. Where did they live?
She lived, Creamery Hill.
Yes.
That house that burned because the people went down to the city and left the heater on upstairs.
Is that what happened? Yeah.
And it caught fire and burned. Yeah, that's where he lived. Now,
Right.
I think they lived somewhere else before, but that's all I remember.
Okay.
Because she always lived there.
That was across the street from us. That's how I knew her. Yeah.
Oh, where did you live?
The greenhouse. Kitty corner. They were on one corner, we're on the opposite corner.
The greenhouse.
The one that's falling down now.
Well, everything's falling out there now. Oh, I don't know. The hospital was across.
That was it.
Oh, that was that was the greenhouse.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I got you.
That one. Right.
Yeah.
Huh. And you said, well, I know your father ran a garage. Did your grandfather? No, superintendent. Okay.
No, my grandfather, he had a harness shop. They had that whole section that went from where the post office is now down to where, the restaurant is now. It used to be a store. That section right on Main Street.
Right.
Okay, that used to be, back in the good old days, it was a whole, it was one straight long building that had at least 4 different stores in it. And my grandfather had a harness shop down on the bottom, and somebody said it had 3 stories. Well, I remember 2, but maybe it did. And my grandmother ran a milliner's shop above his shop.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah.
I think Kevin has photos of that.
Yes,
building when it was
and
still...
well, that's where the Jefferson newspaper. What was it? Harris, I think her last name was. I think she was the first publisher of it.
I used to know. I can't remember now.
No,
Right.
I'm not sure of that. But anyway, that's where it started. Was there.
Excellent. We've been wondering where the newspaper was. That's great. Okay. Yeah. Did your husband serve in the military?
No.
No. How about
He,
you?
well, in the first place, he, I'm sorry, but you seem to be finding out a lot that probably you shouldn't know.
Oh, dear.
My husband's father had a temper and a half, and my husband evidently wasn't doing what he should have done, so his father socked him in the head, and he broke his eardrum.
Oh.
So he had that. Plus, they had the farm, and you got... they wanted the farms,
For the farm.
So that was the reason. He had 2 reasons, so.
Right.
But both of his brothers served.
Oh, was it in a war?
Well, Livio was down in Asia. He ran it was some kind of a tower where he was just off the Australian coast, right in the midst of everything with Japan.
Yeah.
And he got wounded quite badly and ended up spending 6 months over there in the hospital, and then he finally came home.
He must have gotten a Purple Heart.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Which his wife took with him and then lost down in Florida, so. You know how that goes.
Yeah. Did he have any stories about what it was like over there during the war, besides being very sick?
People back in the days of World War II never talked about their experiences. Very, very seldom. I had a friend who was over in England. He was a pilot when I was in high school. He was a couple years older than I was. And they could go in very, very early if they got their parents' permission. Oh, yeah. And he flew something like 50-some flights over Germany, bombing flights. And then he came, well, they finally said he had to leave, because I think you were supposed to do 30. And he came, and he made me promise I would never tell anybody any of the stories he told.
Really?
Because they weren't supposed to talk.
So he served with the American Army,
the Navy.
Air Corps. Oh, the Navy.
Navy. No, I mean the Air Force.
Right.
That was separate. It wasn't Army. It was Air Force.
Right. Yeah. My uncle
Back
was
then.
in that too. Yeah.
I don't know what it is now. I haven't kept track of it.
What was his name? Do you remember?
I don't want to say it.
That's all right.
No, that was.
But he wasn't with the RAF. Some folks, young boys, went up to Canada and across to England. He was with the U.S.
He was just a U.S. Air Force.
Oh, what about the other brother? Your husband had one brother who was over in the Asian theater.
Well, then it was later. He fought in the, oh, what the heck was it? Oh, you know, the battles we had over
Korea.
there. Huh?
Korea?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
okay.
thank you.
That's fine.
Names and I just sort of walk away from each other.
He didn't have any particular stories about Korea either.
Oh, yeah, he came. He said, in fact, when he got here, he said that he thought that the American people ought to know what it was, what a hell it was. Those are his words, to be a soldier. And he said, I know that. And of course, Livio was sitting there when we were having around this table having dinner, and he said, you guys came back and nobody ever knew what your war was like. And he said he thought that people should know, so he had a ton of stories. In fact, one of them I'll let you in on, and it's not very pleasant.
Oh, that's
He and, well, they were, things had kind of simmered down. They were in their foxholes. And all of a sudden, there was a whole bunch of planes flying over, and they were bombing. Well, Benny was in this foxhole, and his friend was in this one. Well, Benny ended up, and they were eating. Benny ended up with parts of his friend's body in his food.
Oh my God.
He told that story.
Yeah.
And he told a lot of them like that.
Yeah. Not
It was not
good
nice.
memories.
No.
For sure. Yeah.
No, and I think he was right. People should know what, and there's no other word for it. It's hell.
Yeah. When I was little, I'm not supposed to talk, but I have to say this. I'm sorry. Eisenhower was president.
Yeah.
And I didn't respect him then the way I do now, because learning more about him, he kept us out of so many wars because he'd had the experience. He knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can remember World War II and President Roosevelt. I mean, he didn't want to get us in it either.
Yeah,
but
that's
it ended up, you just had to.
Didn't have a choice.
Well, look what Japan did.
Right. Do you remember that day? You
Oh,
must.
heavens, yes.
Tell us about Pearl Harbor.
Oh, my God. I begin to feel like a storybook here.
You are.
Let's see. Well, we were driving, it was a Sunday, and we were driving along. We always took Sunday afternoon rides. Well, anyway, we were driving along the road, and one of our favorite programs was coming on the radio, and all of a sudden, we hear the president, and he's making a special announcement that we're now at war with Japan, because it wasn't the formal declaration, because he couldn't do that until, Congress had met and all that crap.
Yeah,
but he said we were at war with Japan because of what they had done. And that's how we found out about it.
My gosh. How did people react up here in the country?
Well, I was, what was I? 11, 12. It became a different world. Because first of all, most of the men went off, and the women started going off to city jobs and stuff where they had never ever left their homes, because they had to. Somebody had to man them, and the men were all gone, so they did that, and it was just a whole different world. That's another topic for another day.
You think, okay. Well, but what about victory gardens? I mean, everybody up here had a farm anyway, but did you have victory gardens?
Well, the school did.
Ah.
But as you said, everybody grew their own produce pretty much anyway. So you didn't, or at least the people I knew.
Yeah, didn't change that much.
Yeah, so it didn't change that much. But we did have raids at night where they would go marching. We had guys who walked through the streets. We also had a team that, they went out and I was a victim more often than not because my mother was head of the whole shebang along with Dr. Dwell. So anyway, I was a victim. And you'd go out and you'd lie in the field, and then the guys would come pick you up and drag you. Well, we used a room in the school as a, as a base.
Hospital kind
and,
of.
yeah, I guess that's what it was. And I still remember Dr. Dwell running something down my throat to show him what you did if you had a certain injury. I wasn't too happy with that one.
No.
Well, it hurt.
Right.
So, but that was just me. But that's what we did. We had air raid drills, and they were very strict. If you could see the light out on the street, because they had patrols that went up and down, they walked, you got fined. And back then it probably wasn't anything comparative. Today it would be $500, but back then it was $25 or $30.
Which was equivalent.
Which was a lot of money.
Yes, right.
So you were very careful. You could have black shades up at your windows, but if they saw any light creeping by.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I've told you, but they took the old church that's next to the inn there on the other side of the green.
Yes.
And they put a tower up around it.
I'd heard that.
And, we high school students would go down there, and we go right after school, and we'd sit there till 9, 10 o'clock at night. And we had pictures all around of all the different planes, both American and German, so we could identify them. And if a plane went by, you had to call it in. That kind of stuff.
Okay. I'd heard that there were women stationed up on that tower.
Yeah.
Above
Well,
the
this was
church.
just kids.
My
The
gosh.
men usually took over after we were there. And
At night.
Yeah, we would do it for 2 or 3 hours after school.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow. So
Yeah,
the whole community pitched in.
I think we were more used to doing that. The world was a different place, and it changed immensely right after the war.
Do you think it was the war that changed it?
No, I would think it was the fact that our whole way of life had changed. I mean, it was the war. It was a result of it. But, women stayed home and they raised their families. And during the war, they learned to get out, and a lot of them liked it. So it just changed everything.
Right.
And you also had a different idea about what life might bring to you.
Yes.
Sad but true. So it changed things.
Do you think we're better off the way we were before?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'd go back to the 40s any day. People I think of Jefferson. And if anybody moved in, I can remember when some people moved in a couple of houses down from us. And the women all got together and they took over some food. And the men would go and they'd say, now, do you need any help with anything? Just call us and let us know and we'll be here. And it was just a different way of life. And it's not that you were dependent upon your neighbors, because you weren't. I think maybe you were more fiercely independent. Back then you really seemed to care about the people. And it wasn't as though you interfered in their lives, because they were still fiercely independent living in towns, but you cared.
Yeah.
And I can remember there were a couple of old ladies that lived outside of town. I also remember the name, but I don't. And oh my gosh, people would go down and help them out, and they had a couple of horses, and the guys would go down and make sure that they were shot, and I don't know.
Right.
You just cared.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to be relatives.
Right.
But you didn't interfere in their business either. It was just when you could help.
How are we going to get that back?
Well, I don't know. I was hoping that maybe this virus stuff would help out, because I think it's made people more aware of doing things other than just selfishly, taking care of other people. When you think of all the things, all the different places they have where you can get food and where you can get...
The food bank.
Oh, I mean,
fabulous.
It's tremendous.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that maybe we'll come out of this, and I'm hoping that, I don't know what your political stuff is, and I don't really care. I just hope that Biden can get through to Congress to do some things for the American people.
Start helping the people again.
Yeah.
Right.
And he seems to be on the right track.
He's trying.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, that's another whole battle.
It is. What about the church? Which church did you and your parents?
The Methodist Church.
Methodist? So right there in town on the village green?
My parents never went to church. I went to church every day, every Sunday with my grandmother Totten. And that's what I called her, Grandma Totten. And we had a special reserved space in the pew, and we'd go in and sit there, and then she'd come over the house, and sometimes Ethel would go too. And they'd have a chat. Of course, I was not allowed to participate in that chat. I was sent out because they were gossiping.
Oh, that was an adult
They didn't
chat.
realize how well I heard.
Oh, right. I have very limited memories of Cora Totten because, I was just a tiny little kid. But I think I sort of assumed that she was shy because she wasn't very talkative, but she seemed very nice to me. How would you describe her?
How do I put it? She was a strange woman.
Huh.
She was very, very reserved.
Yes, that.
And,
yes.
well, I can tell you, I used to go down and we couldn't use the front door. I got upstairs in the house maybe once in my whole lifetime.
I never did, yeah.
And we went into the living room and we sat there and she would bring out she made wonderful molasses cookies. I can taste them yet. In fact, I like one right now, Graham, come on. And, but you could only have one.
Only one.
You could have a cookie. But you did have the living room was really weird. It had like a alcove off from it, and it had 2 or 3 steps that you could go up it. Then she had an organ.
Yes.
And a sofa in there.
Okay.
So she would let me go in and pound on the organ.
She did.
Yes, she did. So
I only looked at it.
yeah, she was very, very quiet and very reserved.
Yes.
And I really didn't know her to know her very well. I mean, my dad always cut the hay there, and of course that was with a scythe. And I would take his lunch and his water bottle, and I'd sit under the tree, and then when he got tired or thirsty, he'd come over, and but I'd sit there, and but I was sitting there, and she never came out to see me or anything. So she was very reserved.
Quiet. Yeah.
But she was a nice lady. And of course, as I said, we went to church together when I was a teenager.
Right.
But I don't remember ever really talking to her a lot.
No.
Of course, you didn't talk in church back in those days. That was a no-no.
But on the walk to and from, maybe, yeah.
Well, no, we didn't walk to and from.
Oh.
I would go to Sunday school or whatever, and then she would come to church. And see, the church is right straight across from my house.
Oh, right. So you didn't go.
It wasn't. You had the school was in front. I can't believe they tore that down. Somebody ought to be kicked right. You know where it would hurt them the most.
That in the Opera House. I agree with
God. How they can do that? Well, anyway, I'm not going there. But no. So the church, we would just have that little short walk, and we didn't talk much. We just went over to the house. As I said, I was banished. Because Ethel and Mom and Graham would chat.
Yeah. Well, now, you mentioned going from your house over to the church, so you must have crossed the village green. I'm just going to hop right to it.
Well, no, you don't cross the village green, because we lived right straight across from Megalie's drugstore.
Oh, so you were on Main Street, next to the Masonic.
Well, the only time, and when I was younger, I didn't go to church. I went to Sunday school and I went home.
Sure.
And that's when we lived down, in the ice cream parlor. That's what it was called.
Ice cream parlor?
The Totten Ice Cream Parlor.
Why did they call it that?
Because they had ice cream, dear.
Did they?
Back in the good old days.
So
Mom made her own.
How wonderful. So which house exactly? I think you probably know, but I don't.
Right next to the bar.
Okay.
That was that weird looking thing with the big windows in the front. That was a restaurant.
Okay. Yeah. And that's where the ice cream parlor was. Several people have mentioned the ice cream parlor, and I didn't know quite where it was.
Well, and Mom made her, I can remember going down into the cellar. That was another interesting thing.
Yeah.
It was in the kitchen, the door to it. It had no outside. You couldn't go to it through the outside anywhere. There was no stairs, nothing. So you had to pick up this. It was probably the size of this table, and it was about this thick, this huge door that you picked up.
Right.
And he had something that he hooked it onto. And then there was this steep thing of stairs that went downstairs. Well, you had to go down there. And back then, they didn't have all the sodas and stuff. You had to make your own. So we had a tank of, it must have been some kind of water, but we rocked it back and forth, Dad and I, like this, until it was fizzing upstairs. Mom would call down when it was fizzing enough, and then they would pipe it up so she could make sodas upstairs. Isn't that interesting?
That is.
It was
That's
a tank,
fascinating.
and once you got it going, it must have been some kind of water, special kind of water.
Right, like a phosphate.
Because she made Cokes and root beer, and there weren't a lot of them. But you you put a squirt of the flavoring in, and then you put the fizz in it.
Right.
You made your own sodas.
Yeah.
But they had I can visualize it. I'm probably talking too much.
No, this is perfect.
I can see the inside of the restaurant. I have that kind of a memory. It's a visual one, and I can see the restaurant. Of course, my mother was one heck of a housekeeper. She wouldn't have had this mess sitting here, I can tell you. It would have all been much, much neater. But anyway, it was all chrome.
Yes.
And it shone. I mean, she polished that stuff. And it would have the ice cream bins were in front. And then she had these spigots that came out. And that's where the fizzy water from downstairs, that was one. And then she had the other ones which would have the different flavorings in.
Right.
And then across was where they had like a bar. It probably was maybe 2 feet wide. And underneath that, she also had some bins for ice cream. And for a while, she was making all her own ice cream.
Great.
Because her mother had done the same thing.
Yeah.
But then she started getting it from a company.
So she must have had some kind of refrigeration system there to keep
Oh,
it.
no.
No.
Well, yeah, just electrical. I mean, it just ran it, but I would have assumed it was just ice.
Oh my.
The pond is right up by the Greenshaw. Okay.
Yep.
Well, it's quite deep where it runs over the edge, or it used to be.
Sure.
I don't know whether it is anymore or not. Anyway, the men would take their team of horses and they'd go up there and they would cut these huge blocks of ice out. They would be about this big.
Right.
And then they would load them on the wagon. Well, Dad had a couple of sheds down in back. So they would have sawdust all on the floor. And then they would unload the blocks of ice, and you would and I was allowed to sprinkle the sawdust on them, and I thought that was just wonderful.
Absolutely.
I probably was 4 years old at this point. And sometimes they would let me ride on the wagon with the horses too. And I love that because I loved horses.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they would pile the blocks of ice in there, and you know, they would stay there all summer until late fall. And because my mother's refrigerator was probably about this wide, and on top it had a bin like this, and they would put that chunk of ice in there, and then the water would drip down the back into a pan underneath, and my father would empty it.
Yeah.
But that's what refrigerators were like back then. And the men, I don't know what kind of a setup they had, but I don't think Dad ever got any money unless they sold some to somebody else. But it was just the town people did it together. And well, he actually had 2 sheds that if they got an extra, well, in fact, he had, there were 4. It was a road like this, and then on one side were 3 sheds, and then on the other side were 3 sheds and a chicken house.
Where you and your
down in
lived.
back of where we lived.
Yeah. So the folks in town who worked on the cutting the ice, just each one took their share? Was that how it worked? Well,
Dad stored it, and they just came and got it when they needed it.
Okay.
Because it was hard to store.
Yeah.
But if you got enough of it in one place, and then you spread it with I don't understand why sawdust worked, but it did.
Help.
It did.
I don't know why either.
Yeah.
Huh.
And it would be there for until, almost time to get some more.
Yeah. Till the next.
And back then the winters came a little sooner and lasted a little longer.
Have you noticed that?
Yes, definitely.
When was the last snow in a season that you remember when you were young? Like, in April, May, June?
I want to say probably early April. Yeah.
That early.
It was pretty much gone by then.
All right.
And then you had spring in April.
Yeah. And the first snow in the season, in the fall or early winter, when do you think that might have come?
Well, I know that my father always said his birthday was November 1st. And it always snowed on his birthday. Oh. And I can remember when we lived at a house down below here when we were first married. And we had quite a steep driveway in, and of course, I gave them a birthday celebration. Well, they got down there, and it was nice weather when they came in. Oh. We had about this much snow when they left. And Dad said, well, I guess he'd have to slip and slide out the driveway again. So that would be.
That's interesting.
And it snowed steadily all winter, most of the time.
No let-ups. Like we sometimes have thaws now in the winter.
I can remember going, I think it was on the way to Richmondville, or Middleburg. It was someplace where they had a big, I think it was going to Middleburg. No, it was kind of a big, huge mountain, and then there was a drop-off on the side. And I can remember being there with Dad, and the snow on the side of the road was way up above his car.
Yeah.
He had a Ford back then too.
So when do you think your father got his first car?
Oh, I'm sure when they had the garage.
Oh, right.
He had it was a rumble seat coupe.
Yeah.
Remember those?
I've heard of them. I don't remember.
Well, I thought maybe you'd seen pictures of them. My mother, of course, was anxious because I couldn't have been more than 3 or 4. And I loved to climb up there in that rumble seat. And, of course, Dad would start the car and he'd take me for a little ride around.
How fun.
And she would be having a hissy fit in there. And my mother had hissy fits, believe me. But I can remember climbing up in that and sitting in it.
So most people in town kept horses until when, would you say?
Gosh, I don't really know. Because there was a lot of farm traffic. So, you know, I can't sort it out. There was one man, I'll tell you this too, and then I'm going to stop reminiscing. Anyway, he was a farmer, and he would do his chores at night. And he had a pair of oxen. And of course, back then on the green, you had a double row of trees, and the grass was all nice and green in there, you know. And people, if they brought their horses, they would park them in there, and they would mow the lawn. So anyway, he would always park in front of the bar, and he'd go in and get his, well, he'd go in and he'd be there quite a while. And he'd come out, and you'd see him stumbling across the street. He'd get up onto that cart with those oxen, and he wouldn't even pick the reins up. He'd just sit there, and he'd cluck it to them, and they'd turn right around and take him home.
They knew what to do.
He never, I swear, he never touched those reins. And it was just a funny thing. I can remember my mother talking about it.
Yeah.
Because he was certainly out of it.
Oh.
I don't know what he did when he got home. Maybe his wife came out and brought him in.
Probably. Took good care of it.
I don't know. I can still see him. I can still see the oxen there, actually.
Isn't that something?
They were gray.
Yeah. Gray? Huh. Yeah. And I always thought oxen weren't very intelligent, but it sounds like those were like horses. They really did.
I think oxen got a bad reputation. I think they were smart. I think they just weren't like horses. They weren't affectionate like horses.
Right.
But no, I never really had too much business with them.
You didn't grow up on a farm, but your parents did, from the sound of it. You've described a lot about the farm life, and your father bringing the scythe to cut the hay behind your grandmother's house. And
well, that's because he had horses that he used on the mail route. We didn't have a farm.
Okay.
Everybody had a big, huge vegetable garden.
Sure.
I mean, you technically farmed it because you canned everything that stayed long enough for you to stuff it in a jar.
Oh, did your mom teach you to can when you were young?
No, I learned myself when I canned. I canned everything.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have any money, but we had a farm.
Right. So tell me, give examples of what you canned.
Oh, once I remember I had a sheet that I kept track of how much I had canned. 96 quart jars of string beans.
Wow.
Plus a whole bunch of beets and, I canned anything that would stay long enough for me to. And you had to cook it for 3 hours. String beans, you had to cook for 3 hours and a half in the jars.
Right.
Because we didn't have pressure cookers in the beginning.
Right.
Yeah. So it was fun.
Oh, yeah.
And we didn't have freezers either. You had a little tiny ice thing.
That's right. Did you make jams or jellies?
Oh, yes.
Yeah? What was your favorite?
Raspberry.
Huh?
Still is.
Mine too. That's great. Just a little side note here. We are hoping to find recipes that people are willing to share with us from the old days. And if there's anything that you can think of that you'd like to...
Well, I have some that I got from my grandmother.
Those would be great.
And I'll dig them out. I'll have to have the girls do it because I haven't been cooking lately.
You haven't?
No. I found it too hard to try to keep my balance with the walker and use my hand and stir at the same time.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So after I almost went over backwards a couple of times, I decided.
Right.
So I have somebody come in and they clean the house pretty much. I don't do that anymore.
That's good.
I'm lazy.
Good. No, you're careful. That's important.
Well, I behave myself.
What was Christmas like? How did your family celebrate Christmas?
Well, there were always stockings, and my father always had one, and he always got a rotten banana.
Oh, was that your mother's sense of humor?
And My grandmother, Stuart, she was great on holidays. She really loved them. And we, well, I don't remember when I was really young. This is after I was older and we weren't doing the restaurant anymore. Because I think when we did the restaurant, quite often Mother would have a special meal for people who wanted to go out for Christmas. So it was kind of we'd open our presents first thing in the morning, and then it was kind of...
She had to go off to work?
She worked. Well, and my father helped her, and we had somebody that helped her too. She had a...
Oh, that's good, yeah.
But my grandmother, Stuart, she was always into holidays.
Nice.
And we had our Thanksgiving dinners there.
At your grandmother Stewart's?
Yeah, I can remember sitting around the table. And
how many people do you think there might have been?
Oh, at least 20.
Yeah. Did the kids have their own separate table, or did you get to sit with the adults?
We ate with them.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, we were part and parcel, well, especially with Grandma Stewart, because she loved us. I mean, I'm not saying that other people didn't love us, but she just loved to have kids around.
She really showed it, yeah.
Yeah, she kept one of her bottom drawers, I'm visualizing it as I speak, of course. It was right between the kitchen and the dining room, and it pulled out from the floor. And she would put all of her old pots and pans and dishes and all the stuff in there. And I would go and I would get them out, and I would cook all the meals for my dolls, you know, and everything. And I would have a whole big mess so you couldn't get through the door. But that's the kind of person she was. And my grandfather loved to play games, and he would play games with me, checkers and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So it was a nice place to go.
That is.
And I used to sneak off and go there. Sometimes I'd run away.
How far away was it? How far did you have to go to get to their house?
They just lived down below. Well, you know where Tabor's used to have their shop? No?
Kevin,
okay, it's about, you know where the inn is. Okay. Well, go down about 4 houses, and it's the big house that's right there. Go down 5 houses.
On the left.
On the left.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big house.
Right.
And they took the porch off, which annoyed the hell out of me.
Ruining the architecture.
Yeah. Well, it was a nice porch, and it was nice to sit on, and in fact, Aunt Marion it was Aunt Marion. Yeah. Aunt Marion and I went out, and we used to like to go out and sit on the top of the porch roof and read and, that kind of stuff out there. And one day my grandfather came home and saw us out there.
Whoops.
That was the end of that. We did not, because Grandma came upstairs. And she was quite a heavy woman, and I can still remember the steps going up, coming up toward us, both Marion and I.
Here she comes. We're in trouble.
Yeah, but she didn't hit us or anything. She just informed us that if we ever did that again, what we could expect.
So did you cut your own Christmas tree back then for Christmas? Or do you remember?
No, I don't. I think Dad always brought it home.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
I don't remember ever going to get one until I got married.
And do you remember any special decorations that you particularly liked?
Not really.
You didn't put candles that lit on the Christmas tree by any chance, did you?
No.
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 Good.
My mother was more sensible than that.
That's good.
No. I can remember stringing the tinsel and the icicles, but I don't think I ever really handled any of the rest of it.
Decorations.
Much.
Yeah. How about Easter? What do you remember about Easter holidays?
Coloring Easter eggs.
Yeah?
We always did that.
Yeah. And Halloween. Any Halloween pranks that you heard about or knew about or experienced?
Well, I don't really remember. trying to think. I know we always dressed up.
Ah.
And I think we had a party. I think we dressed up for school. I think it was kind of a party day.
Sure.
Halloween. And we used to go out trick-or-treating. I can remember doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I can remember when I was 10 or 11, we took a whole bunch of, well, you know, it was the rest of the kids in town that were my age.
Sure.
And we took a whole bunch of young kids and we went around and helped them get their tricks.
That's nice.
Or treats,
Yeah.
whichever.
Yeah.
And people in town were very good. They always had candy and stuff for us.
Yeah. We want to know what kind of games you played when you were a child. Do you remember, like...
Oh, sure. Now I have to come up with the name of them. We played croquet.
Ah.
We roller skated all over the place.
And those were the kind of roller skates that you had to ratchet onto your shoes, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. In fact, I almost broke my leg with those ones.
Ow.
Because we were skating on the sidewalk, and of course, you know, you get little bumps like this because it was stone, you know. And I was going over a corner, which I thought was okay, and my one wheel caught. We used to play softball.
Oh, yeah. That's an idea. Did you play on the green, on the village green?
Oh yeah, we played
Yeah?
softball. That's where we played.
Oh, that's
Plus,
right.
you know, there were always
Down
the
there.
swings and the teeter-totters and the giant stride. I was trying. Yeah, that's not there anymore. It was a chain that had places about this broad, and it had 3 of them, and you'd put your foot through whatever was comfortable for you, and it hooked up to a circle that went around. It was all metal. And then you would put your leg in there and you would push off with it. And especially if you had a bunch of you, I'm not kidding, you'd be out like this. Your body would be going like this. And
that sounds terrifying.
well, no, it was fun, but somebody got hurt. This was after I had left. Somebody got hurt on it, and so they took it down.
Yeah, it wasn't there in the 50s when I was growing up.
Well, I had it on my diagram, and Kevin said that they found where the pole was that had been on. So he said that's exactly where it was.
Wow, good memory.
Yeah. And then they used to have concerts that they had all the time. Plus they had a tennis court, which we kids were not allowed on too much.
It was a serious tennis court.
Yeah, ma'am.
And this is all on the green.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. And then, as I don't know, we'd all get together, and I can't remember. They were games that they probably still play. Well, they don't play games anymore.
Not
They
the same.
use their computers. But anyway, we'd get together and we'd play games at somebody's house.
Now the concerts on the green, were they instruments that were in the band show?
Yeah.
Okay.
They had chairs on the bottom of it. You know, the doors pull up.
Right.
And they would store chairs in there, and they would get them out. I don't know who did it, but they would set them up, and then people would come over. And it seems to me that they did it a couple times a month. You know, during the good weather.
Nice. Yeah.
And I don't know who was in the band or orchestra, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
because I was too young.
Yeah.
And people would bring the blankets, and sometimes they'd lay down on the ground, or the kids would. And you just listen to it.
So this would have been the 30s and 40s, do you think, or
20s, 30s, and
20s?
40s.
Okay.
I'm sure it was going on before I was born.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Nice community events.
They were a community.
Yeah. So did you sing when you played games? And what sort of songs, if you remember any of them?
I don't think we sang much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there might have been a chant or something like that. But, you know, I don't remember the games we played. We played checkers and dominoes, and there were we played a couple of simple card games we'd play.
Would that just be the kids, or would that be adults too that would
No,
play
just
cards?
the kids.
Okay.
And the girls got together and we'd play house.
Yeah.
That's what we usually did.
Did you have a doll or
Oh,
several?
yeah.
Yeah.
Several of them. Well, I mean, several of them when we got together. I mean, but no, I had one. Her name was Nancy. Yeah.
Not Nancy Drew, I assume.
No, she wasn't around.
Oh, okay.
Was it a doll with a glass head, or was it a rag doll? What kind of doll?
Or porcelain.
Well, I had two of them. The first one I had a porcelain head, but the body was, yeah. And then the second one I had was all porcelain.
Do you still have it?
I don't, but one of my kids does.
Oh, nice.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So what other kinds of toys? We just heard about a Lionel train. Did the boys have any trains?
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't know, because girls and boys didn't really play together much. The boys were alone to themselves, and they played more baseball and that kind of stuff. And the girls, although, you know, I can't think of the games we played, but there was a whole bunch of us. I can remember sitting out on the back lawn playing them together. You'd sit around in a circle, and I can't remember the game exactly.
That's okay.
But we would do something
Nice.
like that. And as I said, we played dominoes and checkers and that kind of stuff.
So what kind of home entertainment, outside of what you created for yourself, was there? You didn't have television, right?
No.
Radio?
Yeah, but it was more, they didn't have much on it for kids. It was news and that kind of stuff. I mean, my father listened to it a lot, but I never did much. I'm going back when I was young.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's what we're curious about. So did people tell stories? Like if the family or a group of families got together at night, would there be storytelling or music?
Well, if you got together, like people, I mean, of course, you have to remember, I grew up in a different family from most because my mother was always working in the restaurant. Right. So our life was different.
Sure.
From, a family that sat down and actually ate meals together and everything, because she was always cooking at night for the people that were in the restaurant.
Right.
So it was a different life.
Different, right. Huh.
So, but when it was Thanksgiving time, and Christmas, you always got together, and but the adults they usually shuffled us off. The oldest members, they were supposed to take care of us.
And did they?
I have some tales about that too. This was my father's brother's kids, and they were interesting. And the boys, the girls were allowed to stay at the table, and the boys were asked to leave. And of course, I was younger, and so my mother thought that, I should go play with them. Well, they were at least 3 or 4 years older than I was. And they would maybe do interesting things like, we walked, the path out to the backyard was through my father and mother's bedroom, and she had a whole big bottle of lavender perfume. They made me drink it.
Oh!
That's the kind of interesting thing I did. To this day, I cannot stand lavender perfume.
Oh, my Lord.
And then one time they took me out, and there was this bush. It was prickly. I don't know what it was, but it had prickly fruit on it. and they made me eat it.
Oh,
So that's the
mean
kind
boys.
of interesting things I did with them.
oh gosh. And you didn't tell your parents, did you?
My mother never wanted to believe that anybody would do anything like that. So I gave up.
I heard for you.
Well, I hurt for me too. I still remember the feeling of those prickly things going down my throat.
Yeah. So you went to school in Jefferson, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tell us about the school and what it was like when you were there.
Well, first of all, I think there were 3 grades together when I first started. I think first, second, and third, and then fourth, fifth, and sixth.
Okay.
Because they had the whole high school and everything was there. And the upstairs was pretty much, there was a library. There were 3 or 4 classrooms up there, but there was a library, and I think there was an art room up there too. We didn't do anything other than with your teacher. And she was, I can't remember her name now. She married the principal.
Huh.
But names are not
Don't
one of my
worry
strong
about it.
points.
Doesn't matter.
But she was a strict disciplinarian.
Now, was this the school that was the wooden school right on the green where the
Yeah,
Methodist Church
yeah.
is now? Yeah. They hadn't built the brick school yet.
They built that. In fact, I went to it when I was in 7th grade.
Oh.
Yeah. They just had grades 1 through 6 for a long time after I was in 7th, in
Yeah.
6th grade.
Yeah.
And then they, I don't know when they brought all the elementary up there. I think it was after I had left,
Right.
because I think you'd have to check into that, because I have no way of knowing.
I think that was just before I started there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they were telling us it was a new school for the young kids.
Yeah. Because in the beginning it was just a straight building up there,
Mm-hmm.
and then they added onto it to get the grades up there. Well, I think they had to buy some land, or they were given some land. I'm not sure how it went, but because it was all playing fields out in back of the school when I was there, because it was just that one straight building.
Yeah. It didn't have the auditorium in the back,
No.
classrooms and all. Wow.
Nope.
Interesting. Do you remember your high school prom?
Oh yeah.
Yeah? Tell us about that.
My high school prom.
Yeah.
Let me see. Who did I go with? I can't remember whether. I don't think I had a date for my first one. 'Cause I think June Hennessy and I went to it together.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I can't sort them out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting them mixed up with the ones that I ran down here in Grand Gorge.
Oh, yes, because you
It
were a
kinda
teacher, right?
Gets together with them.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. I know I had a white dress. I can remember that.
Did you make it, or did your mom make it?
No, I bought it.
Bought it?
Or my mother bought it.
Yeah. That's funny, isn't it? You
I
do
just
remember
pulled a
that.
blank about
Yeah.
that.
That's okay.
I'll have to see if I can dig something up.
When we see the pictures, yes. Any other special memories of school days?
Oh.
Good things, bad things, whatever.
Well, when we first moved from the wood building down to it was a totally new experience.
Right.
And it wasn't the best. I don't know, it seemed as though people didn't get along as well as they had. I I can remember that. And I can remember feeling like an outsider.
Oh, no.
There were 2 or 3 of us that did. In fact, it was, Hubble's. Mabel, I think her name was Mabel Hubble. She was a junior or senior, and it was a friend of hers, and they kind of took me under their wing.
Oh, good.
And it just made all the difference in the world, because, you know, I had somebody that I could talk to and
Yeah.
go to, and they were so nice to me.
That's nice.
So,
Yeah.
and both June and I felt like outsiders.
Huh.
I don't remember
And you
why.
think just because of the move from the old wooden school to the...
I don't know, and I don't know if maybe they picked up another school or two.
Well, it's a central school,
I
so
think
I think
so.
they did.
The schoolhouses.
Oh, they did. They picked up
So
the
I think
schoolhouses.
that made the difference
I'll
right there.
bet. You
Because
haven't
we've
going
been
to
we've
school
been
yet.
kind of a unit unto ourselves,
Exactly.
and then you get, you know, another group,
Right.
and they were more dominant than we were
Really?
for some reason. Well, I just felt that. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe that's not true, but that's the way I felt. I
Yeah.
felt like an outsider.
Now, we heard some stories, I think it was later, but I don't know if it might have been happening when you were in school, but that the seniors would give the freshmen a really hard time one day during the beginning of the year. Did that happen when you were... They probably hadn't started it yet when you were there.
No, we went there as, I don't know, we were 7th graders, so,
Right.
and I think the whole system changed because we graduated from 6th grade,
Yeah.
and then you graduate up there, you graduated from 8th grade,
Okay.
so that might have made the difference, I don't know.
What year did you graduate?
But,
Did you go, were you a senior? Did you graduate?
oh yeah.
What year?
46.
46?
Yeah, and then I went
My
straight up
gosh.
to Albany.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be a nurse,
Yes.
but my father told me I wasn't cleaning everybody else's, you know what, up
Nurses
the rest of my
don't.
life. And back then you did what your father said.
Well, that's true.
And then the other choice was an airline hostess, and we took a trip to New York City when I was a senior in high school. And one of our little side journeys was to go on a huge airplane back then. Probably you could put it in the pilot's cabin now, but
Constellation.
it was
yeah.
huge back then.
Yeah.
And anyway, I talked to the hostess, of course, the stewardess. She took us around and explained everything. And I said to her, you know, what do you have to do to... And she said, well, first of all, you have to be short enough. Well, it was something like 5'5" or 5'6", and I was 5'7" or 5'8".
Oh.
So that canceled that out because they didn't allow you to be.
Yeah, there was a range, 5'3", I think, to whatever,
Yeah.
5'7", maybe, by the time.
So I cut that out, and then when I won the scholarship to Albany State,
Well, there you
that
go.
settled that right there.
Absolutely.
Because my parents didn't have to pay much of anything. 'Cause,
Oh, that's wonderful.
yep.
So what did you study at Albany?
Well, I took Spanish and English, and that's what I ended up doing. But I also studied German, and I wanted to be a science teacher, but I had a interesting person the first year I went there, and I decided that if I had to deal with her anymore, I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be a science major. She was a piece of work.
Yeah, teachers have a huge influence on us, for
Yeah.
better or worse. They really do.
Yeah, and I had a couple of good English teachers, and especially in the drama field, because, well, I had always acted in all the plays and that stuff, and I loved drama anyway. So I continued with Mrs. Footerer. I can remember her name.
Huh.
She was an interesting person.
Yeah.
You come to the Jefferson alumni, the school alumni dinners?
We used to, but I haven't been lately.
Hard to do.
It's too hard to get in and out.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, what roles do you remember playing when you were acting in the school plays?
Well, in college, I played this one play where I had all the lines.
Nice.
We were fighting over a man.
Excuse me.
And I had all the lines. Well, I was married to him.
Oh.
Back then, and that made a difference.
Right.
And she wanted me to get a divorce. I don't know how he felt.
Was he even in the play?
No. It was just the two of us.
That's wonderful.
And it almost turned out to be a sad thing. About 3 days before we were supposed to put it on, I got laryngitis.
No.
Yes.
What happened? Did you?
Well, Miss Footer immediately took me to her doctor. And he gave me something, and I was fine.
It worked.
So it went on, and it was quite successful, actually. I was in
wonderful.
I was in a lot of plays up there. I can't remember them all.
Yeah.
But
What fun.
I like doing it.
Yeah.
And I at one point thought I might teach drama, but and well, every time Granny Gorge always had a play, so I did it.
Yeah. Oh, you directed him?
Oh yeah,
Nice.
yeah. Every year we had one.
Oh, I love it.
Which years did you teach in Grand Gorge? What year did you start?
Oh God, my daughter. Let's
Was
see,
it
my
before
young.
the war?
Oh yeah,
Don't think
before the war.
Yeah.
I hadn't graduated,
Right.
from high school.
Graduated in 46.
40. Okay, perfect.
so I started teaching in Grand Gorge when my youngest was 2.
Okay.
And she was born in 1960.
Oh.
So it would have been 1962.
Okay.
I taught there until the school closed. And then I went to Roxbury for a few years.
When did this? I know this isn't Jefferson, but when did the school close in Grand Gorge? Do you remember?
I'm not quite sure. Let's see. I don't really want to say.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah.
I'm not quite sure, but I worked about 10 years down in Roxbury.
Oh.
And then my husband wasn't doing too well, so. And we had never had time, because he worked all summer and I worked all winter. We never had time to do much. So I decided I'd retire a little early, so I did.
Yeah.
I retired a couple years early. We had 15 nice years together.
That's what I was just going to ask. Wonderful. What did you do? Like,
Well, he loved,
together.
you should see my barn. It's full of his junk still. He loved going to auctions and lawn sales and all that kind of stuff. So we did that, and then we traveled down to Florida. We went all over. We went to the Grand Canyon. We went up to the Yellowstone National Park, and a couple of those were bus trips, but usually we drove. And of course, we had a daughter that lived in Kentucky, so we swing down to Florida to visit his brother and his wife, and then we'd drive up across country and spend at least 3 weeks with my daughter, and then we'd come back through New York State and stop off at Susan's in Geneva, and so we drove around the countryside, and it was nice.
Sounds good.
It was a good life. I can't knock it.
Do you remember Old Home Day?
Oh yes. I was in the parade quite frequently.
What, as what? What did you?
Well, I can remember the first one. There's a picture of it in one of his books. I've got a doll carriage, and my mother decorated it all up, and I got a baby in there, and I'm all decorated too. and I pushed that in the parade. And then, of course, I marched with the Girl Scouts, and then my friend used to come over, and and even if she didn't, I'd ride my pony in the parade.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Huh. What was your pony's name?
Curly.
Curly. Haha.
Yeah. Oh, we had a time, Curly and I. My father fenced in the backyard after we got him. And I'd go out there and I could ride around, and I had memorized Grace Harlow Gray books. She was she went out west, and she was settling the West down. And I memorized it, so I would play all the characters while I was riding around on my pony. I'd have a ball, and I could go in and eat lunch and just leave my pony out there because Dad had the fence all up. So, the pony just ate her grass and ate his grass rather, and so I spent a lot of time with my horse.
Nice.
I spent a lot of time with all my horses because I never was without one.
Oh gosh.
Yep. Well, Dad got the first pony from over in Stafford. The people used to, they rented to city people all the time. And they were only there for a couple of months. But they would have to keep the horses.
All year.
All year. So he would, this one guy, Dad knew him, so he would put his horses up for, you keep them for their care for the winter. You can have them. So he went up, and that's how I first got Curly.
Ah.
So I had him for everything except the 2 summer months, because they closed, in September they would be back, and they didn't open up until July, so it was July and August that I didn't have the pony for.
Not too bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
What color was his coat?
Spotted. He was black and white.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, I had a couple of roans after that.
Yeah. There were a couple of other festivals in town, and one was the Maple Festival. Do you remember that?
That's after I left.
Oh, that's later. Okay.
I don't remember it, really. And, I mean, it might have been there, but I don't think the kids participated much in it.
Right. Do you have any idea when Old Home Day last occurred? Because
No.
I know it was still happening in the 70s, because I came for a visit once then.
I was gone.
Oh.
And I know it occurred for quite a while because I used to bring my kids over to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they loved it.
Right. That's good. Yeah. How
Yeah.
about Heritage Day?
No.
No. Yeah. That's much later. Right. Do you remember the general stores in Jefferson? You remember Mitterers?
Mitterers was later.
Ah, okay. Do you suppose they had a little ice cream dispensary parlor in the front of their store? Do you suppose they got their equipment from your mom's?
I don't know.
Don't know. Yeah.
I have no idea.
I don't know either.
Because
Anyway.
nobody in the family was into that once they sold it.
Right. And Hewlett's would have been there because that was several generations.
Yeah, that was the grocery store.
Yeah. Did you ever go in there for
Oh my
shopping?
goodness. Do you think I had a mother that didn't need milk or this or that and the next thing? I mean, and we lived just, two places down plus a parking lot. So
Talk about handy.
yeah. I can see this. Yeah, they had this pole that came down in the middle of the store, and you could get maple syrup there. You just brought your own can, and they must have had it, in some kind of container somewhere, and you could get your maple syrup there.
I never knew that. That's great.
Well, it probably wasn't there.
By the 50s.
Yeah. No, so anyway, I can remember that.
Yeah.
And they had all kinds of stuff along the walls, and a lot of it you just go pick up. and then, you know, you'd take it to the counter and they'd add it up.
Yeah, yeah.
But some of it you had to help out with.
Yeah.
So,
I think Dot had a little jewelry counter at once towards the back a little bit.
he might have.
Yeah.
I probably, well,
You might not.
if I had to get something, I had 25 cents, so I had to go pay for it.
Yeah, we did some Christmas shopping there. That's
Yeah.
And do you remember what's now the Mill Pond Inn in its previous incarnations as?
Now, where's that?
I think it was Golfetto's at one point, and
You mean
Right.
way outside of town?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It wasn't, well, it was Golfetto's, because my mother worked there.
Oh,
But it was after I had, you know, I wasn't home.
okay.
Yeah, she worked down there. She worked nights.
Right, right.
Yeah, it has that big parking lot in the front.
That's right.
Turn
yeah,
around.
yeah. Huh. So your only memories of that would be that your mom worked there?
Yeah, because, I mean, I remember it, but we never went out to eat.
Yeah, yeah.
One didn't go out to eat. You went down there to drink, predominantly.
That was my impression, yeah, yeah. I was too young to know, but
Yeah.
it's kind of the impression.
Well,
Yeah. Was there still a creamery here in town that you
Well,
remember?
yes, it was right above where my father's garage was. That's why they called it Creamery Street. 'Cause the building was right, it was on the left, no, on the right as you went down the hill.
Yeah. Which side of the stream was it on? On the town side or on the other side? Do you remember?
I'm trying to think. It almost seems like the stream went almost through some of the buildings.
Oh, it would have probably.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because I
To
think
power it.
they used the water to power it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, so it might have straddled.
I think it did. You know, I don't really, I can see the building. It was
Yeah.
gray,
Huh.
but, or bluish gray,
Yeah.
but I can't really.
Right.
Because we used to go down, and it was funny because they had over the road, they had well, it was like a big, not over the road, on the side of the road, they had this big thing that you could look down and into the creek.
Ah.
And we used to go down there before school and mess around.
Yeah.
We didn't do much other than throw pebbles in the creek, but
Sure. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, the creamery was gone by the time we got here in the 50s.
yeah.
How about a feed store? Was there a feed store up off of Main Street past? I'm thinking near where the old post office was.
I'm trying to think. There must have been a feed store there somewhere. But I think that, well, yeah, it was right, no, the feed store was right next to where I lived. It was right back there.
Oh, you mentioned that one,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
I didn't
only
know
feed
about that
store
one.
I knew.
Okay. And a hardware store?
Well, that was the one I was trying to think of. That was at the end of
The building with the four different.
with the floors.
Yeah.
Oh, who ran that? I could have told you a minute ago if you hadn't.
Sorry.
Hewlett?
No,
Hewlett?
I don't think so.
no. Hewlett's was the grocery store.
Yeah, that's the grocery store.
Oh God, they lived
Harvard's?
They lived right next door to it.
It was Dittmeyer's by the time I was there, but
Yeah,
that's later.
no, that's later. Hartwell comes to mind, but that's not it.
Or Harder's? Could it have been Harder's? No.
No.
Huh. That's all right.
Well,
Kevin will figure that one out. If he hasn't already, he probably has. Do you remember the Grange Hall?
oh
Ramona
yeah,
Grange?
oh yeah,
Yeah. Do you remember doing anything there?
Not much.
No.
They had card games there.
Ah.
I never was a member. I never did it. And then my parents weren't members
Right,
either. so-
right.
And you had to kind of be a member to put a finger in the door.
Oh.
Back
okay. Okay. Interesting. And how about the Masonic Hall? Did they have any events where they'd invite the community, or?
Well, if they did, my parents weren't part of it. Now, my mother and I used to go over and we'd wash up the dishes and stuff after they had their meetings.
Oh, because you were right, practically
Yeah.
next door. Yeah.
And, well, in the beginning, it was a really mess out and back.
Oh.
And, of course, my mother was a neat freak anyway.
Yeah.
And it really bothered her because there were bushes and crap all over that.
Right.
Well, the whole strip that's back there.
Yeah.
And it was, part of it was on a little hill, and then it was flat.
Right.
So Dad and she must have gotten together and talked about it. And so he went over and he said, if I clean it up, would you let my wife plant a garden back there?
Oh, my.
So he cleaned all the bushes up and he mowed it, and he kept on mowing it. He took care of he took care of the sidewalk and stuff in the winter time, and
Wonderful.
and my mother planted. She had a ton of gladiolas and I think we grew some peas back there.
Yeah.
So it was all taken care of.
Right.
So
Lovely.
yeah,
You did a nice thing for them.
because the whole thing was just a mess.
Yeah.
Because nobody mowed it or.
Yeah. It had gotten that way more recently, but we're fixing that.
I know.
Do you remember the blizzard of '58? The one that had the 27-foot snowdrift on Route 10 and took 3 days to...
Well, that might have been the one I was remembering with driving with Dad.
Could have been.
Yeah, it could have been. I mean, I wouldn't have a date to stick on it.
Well, you'd
But
be,
I don't know. No, I was
you'd be
married
older.
after that one.
You'd be older.
Before
yeah.
that one.
There was one in the 30s that I've heard a little
Yeah.
bit about. That's
I think
probably
that
the one you
probably is the
remember.
one that I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you hear anything about what the farmers had to do during that with the milk and all that?
No.
Okay.
I didn't have any contact.
Right.
Well,
Kids in school.
it would depend. If it was the 50s, we went through it because we had cows.
Yeah.
But you didn't let your cows out in the wintertime anyway, so it wasn't that much different. The only thing would have been that, I mean, we had a roundhouse. It was a huge building, probably 3 times the size of this, that attached to the barn. And we would let the cows out there during the wintertime so they could, and we would have hay and stuff out there for them. So they'd get some exercise,
Roll
and
a little bit.
they didn't just have to.
I want to ask, has your life changed at all because of this coronavirus pandemic?
Well, it didn't, because I had been in the hospital for 6 months. I had all kinds of crap going on.
Wasn't any broken bones, something else?
No,
Okay.
it was internal.
That's right.
And I had, I wasn't in the hospital. I was in the nursing home in Cobleskill. And so when I came home, I was kind of restricted. Plus, I had gotten off balance with vertigo and, all that
Yes.
kind of crap. So I wasn't running around like a chicken with my head cut off as usual. So it didn't really affect me that much because I wasn't used to running around. That had not been part and parcel of my life for a couple of years. So it was easy to settle in.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. No, I have a good time living.
That's
I
wonderful.
really do.
Yeah.
I don't do a lot of things, but I keep myself occupied if it's no more than watching silver run down the room on the TV. That's Lone Ranger's
Lone
horse for
Ranger.
you who are ignorant.
No, I grew up on him.
Yes. Well, I'm watching him again.
All right. And Tonto, did you know that Tonto was a local Indian? He was an Iroquois.
Oh, wow. I
That's
didn't know that. Well,
Sorry. I'm the one who should be quiet here. Okay.
no, I think it's interesting. I learned something here today.
That's great. And then we wanted to, I know you've shared lots of wonderful memories with us, but do you have any special memories that you haven't mentioned that you'd like to share with us to make sure Jefferson remembers them?
Well, I had a good childhood growing up there. Well, one that I haven't shared with you, I don't think, is when I was I couldn't have been more than, 3, I don't think.
Yeah.
Might have even been a little younger. I used to take my doll carriage and my dolls and my set of dishes and all that garbage, and I'd take it out in front, or my mother would help me out, because it had a big step there to go into the thing. So, and over on the side where you went up the stairs, because they had rooms for rent upstairs, and you could go in that way without coming into the store if you wanted to, or you could go into the store and go through the door that was right there. But anyway, because you would have a key to that door. But anyhow, it had a nice big piece of concrete there. So I'd set up my dolls and my dishes and all this stuff. And Buster would be right there by me.
Buster the dog?
That's my dog. In fact, there's a picture of it in one of the books.
Oh, good.
And so he would sit there, and if anybody came to go in, and I was a little girl, and they would come over and they would try to talk to me and say, "Oh, that dog, oh my God," his ears would go up and he would growl. Oh, wow. His fur would fall up.
He was going to protect you.
Yes. And they would zip into the store. And yet, if I wasn't out there, they could go pet him, they could do anything with him.
Isn't that something?
And I always I always fed my dolls, of course. So I always had something there for Buster, too. So he got his lunch, too. But I can remember playing out there a lot.
Yeah, nice.
I'd set up house and have a good time.
That sounds lovely. That really does.
There's one more memory, and this isn't very nice. I used to get up much earlier than my parents did, because they had to clean up the store. They never got to bed until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And I was an early riser. I'd wake up between 5 and 6. And my bedroom was, we had 3 beds in the bedroom. My brother's, my mother's and father's, and mine.
Okay.
And mine was right next to the closet door, so I could sneak in there and get dressed without bothering them. So I'd do that. And I'd go out and I'd play around. Well, I always went down to see the horses, because we had at least 3. And the guy next door, I think he used to help Dad. I'm not really sure, but I know he was over there a lot, and I liked him, and he was a nice man. Well, usually he'd let me come in, and I could pet the horses while he was feeding them and stuff like that. Yeah. Well, I went down this one morning, and he wasn't in any of the stalls. And the barn had a stairway that went up and turned. It had 3 stories. Well, the loft was the highest one. It was kind of a half story on the second one. And anyway, and it had a window that looked out down this way, just past the stairway. Well, I looked up there, and I saw this pair of legs hanging.
Uh-oh.
And it was right in front of the window. And I thought, what's he doing hanging? I thought he was hanging on the railing up there. So he didn't move. So I thought, oh, gee, that's funny. So I went up and told my father and mother. Well, my mother didn't believe me. She said, oh, he's probably just reaching for something. Well, Dad went down, and I followed him down. Well, he had hung himself in the barn.
I was afraid you were going to say
that. And I can still see those legs hanging there. My mind.
No idea why.
No, I don't think they ever found out why. And I think he was the husband of the woman that lived right next door to us. I mean, I think they lived right next, but I'm not sure about that. But I think Dad told Mom that she should get her mother to come up, because I think they were friends, and talk to her. So
I don't know, yeah.
that's the worst memory of my
gosh.
life.
That's a sad one.
And when
Sorry you had to see that. Oh, yeah,
every time I think about that barn, I can see it.
yeah.
And the other thing I see, the one horse, he was called Dick. He hated my mother. He didn't hate me. I mean, I was feminine, but he just hated my mother. So she had to be really careful around him. I mean, she had a long thing that she would put the feet over and everything. And that was one horse she didn't take care of. My father took care of him. Well, this one day, my mother had this tam, and she loved it. And it had a little tiny thing like this on the top of it. Well, doesn't Dick reach over and take that, pick it up, and drop it in the stall, and then he just proceeds to dig at it until there is nothing left of that hat.
He really didn't like her.
And
Oh my.
I think he was telling her, see, if you get in here, that's what I'll do to you.
Exactly.
I can still remember seeing it.
Something.
And she was so mad because that was her favorite hat.
She could do about it.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, animals have a way about them. They let you know, don't they?
Oh, they do.
They do.
They
yeah,
do.
Yeah.
And people don't realize how smart they are.
I agree.
I'll tell you, if you work with animals, I mean, cows, some people think are dumb. Well, they're not. And they have their own ways of doing things, and you better watch it. I had one cow that hated me.
No.
And I never did anything to her, but she just hated me.
Sometimes they'll get an idea in their head, yeah.
I was up there one day by myself. I was putting the cows in. I usually did that, and then Gina would come up later. I'd go up and get them all in the stanchions and feed them. And I thought the stanchion was closed that she went into, and it wasn't. Well, I was out getting another cow in, and all of a sudden she comes around the corner and she chases me. Well, luckily I went through it was an open stanchion, and she went through one that had a stanchion in it.
Ouch!
So she got her head through there, and I stopped. I put the top down on that so she couldn't go any further. And then I came down here to the house and bandaged up my ankle because I hurt it when I went through the place, because it was all concrete. So when I fell,
Ouch.
but anyway, so they have their own likes. And my husband didn't believe me until one day she'd had her calf, and the calf was down here in the field, and he said, help me get that calf out.
Yeah.
So I said, well, the cow was in there, and I said, well, if you take care of that cow, I'll be glad to go get the calf by myself.
Yeah.
He said, oh, she won't bother you.
Ha.
Well, I just made it through the fence. In fact, I caught it was a barbed wire fence, and I caught my skirt on it, and she came over, and she was going like this at the skirt. Guess what happened to that cow?
I don't know.
I canned her. Well, and that's the next day.
Lady versus the cow. Lady wins.
Yeah. The next day he had George come down, and they butchered her.
The next day.
Oh yeah.
He learned his lesson,
yes.
didn't he? Yeah.
Well, he was frightened too, because if she'd ever,
Oh yeah.
because they had horns then,
Sure.
and if she'd ever gotten me, she would have made a mess
Oh
out
yeah,
of
that
me.
would have been terrible.
Yeah.
But the calf it got a different, other cow took care of it, or no?
Well, it was young enough to take care of it, so
Uh-huh.
it was just out in the field.
Oh, I see.
Gina
Yeah.
wanted to. I don't know whether the vet was coming to brand them, or,
Oh, maybe.
or
Yeah.
for some reason he wanted the calf.
Huh?
I don't remember that part
Well,
of it.
I'm
That
sure
kinda
glad
got
she
lost
didn't
in
get
the
you.
shuffle.
Yeah. Sounds like a pretty exciting day. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I had a few of those.
Yeah.
No,
Well.
basically, I loved the animal, and
Mhm.
we had a good time.
Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap up for now, and we want to thank you very, very much.
No, I've enjoyed it. It's been nice
Oh,
going
I'm
down
so
to
glad.